Today we're talking about how to stop creating anxiety by endlessly thinking about all the what ifs and looking for problems that aren't actually there. Stick around. Welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Nina. I'm a life transformation coach, and here at this channel we talk all about mental health, personal development, and understanding our own psychology so that we can live our best possible life. So if you aren't already a subscriber, please go ahead and become one. We definitely want you to stay connected. So maybe this scenario sounds all too familiar, where we have a situation or a scenario in our life where there is not really a whole lot of reason for concern, but for some reason we really start to obsess over it and we look for anything that could potentially go wrong. We start to think, well, what if this happens, or what if that happens? And we invent all these scary stories, and we then latch on to one of them, as unlikely as it is, as irrational as it is. We start to believe that this could really happen, and we become terrified. We get filled with fear and anxiety. And we really start to lose our peace of mind, because this is going to bother us for the whole day or the whole week or sometimes even the whole month. As again, irrational as it is, we feel the need to prevent this situation from happening. We want to kind of control it in some way, and it becomes the whole focus of, again, our day, our week, or our month. And what makes it 100 times worse is that we've also convinced ourselves that if this terrible thing comes into fruition, that there is absolutely no way we could handle it. We could never get through it. So we feel completely helpless. We feel like this is going to be a complete disaster. And this reminds me of one of my favorite proverbs. It's actually a Swedish proverb, and it says, "Worry gives small things a big shadow." And that is so incredibly true. So why then do we do this? Why do we look for problems that are not actually there? Why can't we trust the universe? Why are we always looking over our shoulder or waiting for the other shoe to drop? Well, I think there are actually many different reasons why we might do that. And I'm going to give myself as an example, because this is something that I definitely struggled with for much of my life. So what was happening for me specifically is that I would often wake up with this generalized sense of anxiety. I didn't really know what it was from. I couldn't really pinpoint it, but I had that shortness of breath. I had that uneasy feeling in my stomach, and I would always try to kind of rack my brain to figure out what was causing this anxiety. So really the first thing I would think of, I would assume would be the cause of this anxiety, and I would just latch onto this as a huge problem, and it would become the problem of the day. And the next day I would have a new problem, and the cycle would continue. What I did not realize at the time is that anxiety is not always attributed to a specific worry. Sometimes it can just be those physiological symptoms. We can have the shortness of breath, we can, have the sweating, we can have the uneasy stomach, we can have the racing heartbeat, but it doesn't mean that it is about something specific. Sometimes it could just be those symptoms, or it could be a combination of things. It doesn't mean that there is some kind of problem that we need to kind of figure out and get to the bottom of so we can really alleviate this anxiety. But that is what I was doing, and I think that happens for a lot of people. So I'm going to say that is the first reason that can happen. The second thing that can happen is that we think we are preparing ourselves for dangerous situations by really trying to detect a problem. So we feel like we're going to be able to avoid a problem if we can spot it in time. So we're going to always be scrutinizing everything. We're going to be looking over our shoulder. Again, we're waiting for that other shoe to drop, because we think if we can figure out a problem before it happens, we can prevent it from happening altogether. So this one is all about control. We believe that we can control situations if we are aware of them. And there are a lot of problems with this way of thinking as well, because of course there's no way we could ever know what the real potentials are. And more often than not, the things that we think of as potentials are way scarier than anything that could happen in reality. And also, ironically, the things that generally do happen that are problematic for us aren't things that we really foresee. These aren't things that we've really envisioned in our mind. They are just things that happen to happen. So there's really no reason to be, thinking of every possibility, because there's no way we could know all the potentials in the universe. And the third thing that I see a lot of times is that we look for these problems because we can use them as a distraction so we don't have to face something bigger in our life. So maybe we have a big wound, a big past event that causes us a lot of pain, or we have a current situation that we feel like we really can't handle. So subconsciously, we are looking for distractions. We are looking for anxieties and worries to really, fill our time so we don't have to face whatever it is that is problematic for us. So in a sense, we are choosing what we are going to worry about. And sadly, it really doesn't even matter which of these things is really causing us to look for problems, because the end result is the same. The end result is that we are going to experience the same negative emotions that we would experience if these terrible things were actually happening. We are putting ourselves through the fear and anxiety of all these traumatic events, even when they are just in our mind. But imagine with me for a second what your life would be like if we only felt fear and anxiety when we really were in danger, when there really were terrible events happening. And we didn't have the fear and anxiety when we were imagining them or considering different situations. Imagine how much less suffering you would experience in your life. The fact of the matter is that we spend way too much time worrying about situations that never ever happen. And we find in our life that what we focus on really tends to grow. So if we're looking for problems, we are definitely going to find them, because if we don't find them, organically, we are going to invent them. So we're going to just stay in this cycle of suffering for the rest of our lives if we don't really start to work on this behavior. So let's talk about some of the strategies that we can use to start to break this habit. I think the biggest thing that we can do for ourselves is to really start to understand that these are just thoughts. This is not reality. We want to be able to notice this behavior, notice this habit when it comes up for us. So if we start to notice that, oh, I'm really saying, what if this, I'm starting to ruminate, I'm starting to create these, very scary stories. We want to stop ourselves and just have that awareness of what is happening and bring ourselves back to the reality of this is just a thought. Something that's helpful for a lot of people, especially at the beginning of this process of really trying to change our behavior, is to write these feelings and these thoughts down. Write it all out, as irrational as they are. Maybe we feel like we have to get it out, that these feelings and these thoughts need to be heard. And a very effective way to do this is to go ahead and put them down on paper. So at a later point, you can look at them and you can really judge for yourself how rational these thoughts are. But for now, go ahead and just get it out. And from there, we want to start this new habit of really questioning our thoughts, to argue against them, to see how rational they are, to really, look at them and see, what is the likelihood that this would ever happen? Is this something that is deserving of my time and attention? And we can learn to do this by using a form of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy. If you've been subscribed to this channel for a while, you know that I am a huge fan of this, and I talk about this all the time because I feel that it can truly transform our life, and it definitely transformed mine. So I will absolutely link down a video for you in the description box below that I made about how to perform cognitive behavioral therapy on yourself as a method of self-therapy. But keep in mind, this is something that you can certainly do with a mental health professional as well if you need further guidance. But I'll go ahead and put that in the description box below, because once we can learn to really argue against these thoughts, we're going to see them really transform very quickly. Another thing that we need to do is to remind ourselves that our anxiety symptoms are not necessarily connected to a specific worry. Like I talked about earlier, there are just a number of reasons why we could be experiencing these physiological symptoms, and it doesn't mean that we have to endlessly search for a reason that we are having them. It doesn't have to be about a specific problem that we haven't detected yet. It could just be that we are experiencing these anxiety symptoms. And as simple as it sounds, once I really started getting in the habit of reminding myself that this is not necessarily due to a specific problem, and if there's nothing obvious that is coming up for us, there's really no reason to continuously look and to consider all these what ifs. Another strategy that we can try is called mental anchoring, and this is something that I also made a video about. I will go ahead and link that in the description box below, but it's all about finding kind of this mental place where we feel safe and secure, and kind of allowing ourselves to really be in that time and place and moment while we let these other thoughts pass. So that's something that can be very soothing and very comforting and can help us from really kind of spiraling out of control. Now, if we are doing all these things and we are practicing the cognitive behavioral therapy and we are reminding ourselves of all these things, but we are still feeling this need to constantly search for problems, we may need to use some introspection and to be honest with ourselves about something deeper that might be going on. Do we have unresolved issues? Are there traumas or hurts or wounds that we really haven't gotten past? And if so, we want to start to address these real issues in our life, these real problems, and don't feel like this is something that you necessarily need to do alone. Again, a mental health professional is trained to help you through these situations and to give you the tools that you need to start to move past these different experiences that are so, difficult and challenging in your life. So that's something that we have to think about as well. Are we really avoiding issues? If we're avoiding issues, then we're never really going to have an end to this problem until we address them. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, please know that even when problems happen in our life, and yes, there will be problems, you will be able to get through them. You are a warrior. You have gotten through every single thing that has ever happened to you in your entire life, both the real situations and all these terrible things that you have imagined could happen. Because remember that we are experiencing those same terrible negative emotions whether or not these things really come into fruition, because that is how our body operates. And guess what? You have gotten through each and every one of them. And there's no reason to think that that wouldn't be the case in the future. We will be able to get through whatever comes in our way, and we will be able to conquer anything that comes in our path. So please know that, and also please know that there is nothing beneficial whatsoever that can come from constantly looking for problems and endlessly considering what ifs and creating these terrible, frightening stories for ourselves. We are doing nothing but creating suffering for ourselves on a daily basis. So if we can learn to break this habit, we are going to experience much less suffering and a lot more happiness in our life. So I truly hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like it, share it with someone else who may need to hear the same message today. Also, if you are not a subscriber, please go ahead and become one. We definitely want you to stay connected. And I thank you so much for spending time with me today. Have an absolutely amazing day.